give CenturyLink a chance to give us a little update before we go through the discussion items. Nancy, are you on the line?
I am. Is Cindy on too?
I am.
Morning.
I'm here.
So, can you just review the Brett's Longmont cut over a couple nights ago?
So we cut over the Bretta PSAP yesterday morning. We had one minor issue with the transfers that were pre-programmed into the CPE, the kind of one-button transfers. Some of them in the Longmont CPE were still set to 2-digit codes, which are not supported in the ESInet. So we ended up cutting Longmont back temporarily while we resolved that. The CPE vendor was on site, so they were able to quickly reprogram those. And then we re-migrated Longmont and tested it out, and then completed Boulder County Sheriff, Boulder PD, and the University of Colorado. A couple things coming out of that are the site abandonment switches for the remote site. They don't, in the direct SIP environment, those remotes do not have an abandonment switch. They need to call into the CenturyLink NOC if they need to abandon their site. So there's some open questions and concerns around that I'm digging into to see if there are any alternatives that can be designed to resolve some concerns there.
Cindy, this is Kimberly with LIDA. I'm not sure I understand what you're meaning on the abandonment module. I thought the pad device allowed you to utilize that pad device just like the Make Busy.
Those are only installed at the host site. So Longmont and Boulder have the PSAP abandonment module, Boulder County Sheriff, and they have the switch that can flip to abandon the site. The remote sites, Boulder PD and University of Colorado, because there are no circuits terminating to them, do not have those switches. The remote sites would have to call into the NOC to have their site abandoned and have calls failed over.
So if a host site, if they do the abandoned switch thing, will that also take down the remote site?
No. I don't believe so.
Can we find out?
That was going to be my question.
Just believe.
This is Kevin.
Yeah, we tested it at Longmont. It did not, but I will confirm.
This is Kevin Newton. No, it does not. It only takes down the site it's at.
Yeah.
So it seems that the remote sites on a host remote system are losing some capability by not having the PAD at their location, correct?
Yes. They're losing the ability to just hit switch to abandon their PSAP.
Right. So I have an open issues list. I've put this on it to have conversations if there's any enhancement that can be done to add that functionality for the remote. At this point, we can't install a device there because there's no circuits that terminate there from a CenturyLink standpoint. But I have engaged the team, the ESInet team, and the CenturyLink team to start those conversations to see if there's any other options. That I think is the main issue that came out of yesterday, as well as some concerns around. So currently, that abandonment switch is installed at the DMARC. CenturyLink is installing that, and so it's being installed at the CenturyLink DMARC. In Boulder County's case, that is not conveniently located for them because it's in their basement.
So will this
So,
also affect like LIDA and other authorities which have a demarc point that's not at each PSAP?
It could. Now, your CPE technicians can extend that to a more convenient location for you, but the CenturyLink tech has to install it at our demarc where our responsibility of that circuit ends. And we can work with you if you want to have it placed somewhere else. But it would be a time and materials for CenturyLink to do it, or have your PSAP technician, or you can have your PSAP technician put it someplace more convenient. But those were the main concerns, and I just wanted to be transparent with everybody going forward with that.
So Cindy, I didn't capture what's the follow-up you're doing with CenturyLink in conversations about remote sites needing to call the NOC for abandonment. So I'm just trying to capture the action item of what the follow-up is you're doing.
I am working with our engineering team as well as the Entrado ESInet team to see if there are any other solutions that can be developed that would allow a remote site to have a switch they can flip to abandon the site. We don't currently have an option, but we're having conversations to see if there's one that can be developed for that. Just because I understand the concern, especially with the universities that may only have one person on staff, and if things go wrong, they can go really, really wrong in a hurry. And they might not have the capability to pick up the phone to call somebody.
So I know our Viper environment, if we log out, if all of the consoles are logged out, then it automatically will redirect those calls to the backup PSAP. So
that is true.
Just from an operational perspective for Bretza, as you're working through and waiting for some engineering conversations back from Cindy, on the PSAP side, if all the consoles are logged out, it should automatically, but you'll want to check with your CPE support team, roll to your backup.
They're on Viper as well, I believe, and yes, they will. If they're not logged in at the remote site, it will roll to the backup. Or if they log out, it will roll.
This is Daryl. So in the other states where CenturyLink has installed ESInets, has this never come up before, where the remote sites might want to keep that functionality of having a make busy switch?
I'm not aware of it coming up in any other scenarios at this point.
Okay.
So just be sure though, if the pad or make busy is hit at the host site, which means that the dispatchers from that site are relocating to the remote site still stays up.
Yes.
Thanks.
So I guess when you're hitting that pad device at the host site, I don't know if this is a question for you, Kevin. At that time when you're hitting that, do you determine which SIP sessions you're abandoning that need to go on the make busy? I mean, how does the pad device differentiate what it's make busy from a switch perspective? Because I guess I just don't understand. Do we log into it and then determine these SIP sessions we need to abandon?
That might be, if you want intricate details, you'll want to have that. I think Entrado's on here, but it's already programmed for this location you're at, and it will busy out that URI, so the URI won't receive any calls.
Right, but if a pad device is located at the host,
right,
and it's supporting multiple demarcation for those SIP sessions, and only the host PSAP needs to abandon and then go to their backup, which is a remote, I'm just curious how that make busy switch can differentiate which SIP sessions they are going to roll.
It's the native URI that location. So when we have site A, we're installing services there that has a native location, a native PSAP, a native URI. When you hit the abandonment module switch, it will busy out just that one because it's based on we did it based on the location.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
So each PSAP has a URI.
Yes.
Okay. So it seems that the way Douglas County is doing it, terminating their circuits at the remote sites, might be the real way to do it.
For what, that one piece of functionality? I'm going to say I'm not going to disagree.
Other complications around the alley side. So I think there's pluses and minuses to both.
In that
Yeah.
situation, Cindy, for Douglas County, are you installing pad devices at each of the remotes?
They're not technically, we're not treating them as remotes. We're treating them as standalone. Yes.
Okay.
Because you're terminating at all 3 demarcs, correct? Is that the
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Just one more aspect on that demarc that came as a surprise to Boulder County. So not knowing that make busy switch was going to come at the demarc, so that would be something to definitely be aware of before you cut over.
Right,
Because
and
it did
that's
come
why I
as a
wanted
surprise.
to bring it up. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that didn't come as a surprise to anybody else. And it can be moved. It's just a matter of who's moving it. We're not supposed to, for the agreement, go past our demarc on that stuff. And I do need to get back. I did see the list of questions from Boulder County last night, and I will go through those and start working with you guys on some answers to those questions.
I think the other concern is that, we got extended for a month and there was, the review and planning of all of this, and for this just to be learned and be surprised on installation. I don't understand why that happened, and we won't want that to happen in other circumstances with other authorities or PSAPs.
As far as where the demarc is or where the devices are installed?
Well, with us, it's the demarc. With somebody else, it might be something else that, it seems that during the planning and all of the work you did leading up to the cutover, that should have been identified, and addressed in advance or thought through in advance, not, as it's being installed, cut over, figure that out. And so I don't know what kind of circumstances may come up with other PSAPs, because PSAPs have different CPE in different environments, but is there some reason why that wasn't understood that was going to happen at this point, that we can use to make sure for other PSAPs are being deployed, we don't have surprises at cutover?
And CenturyLink, before you answer that, I just wanted to point out that on December 18th, Bretza brought this point forward, asking specifically about the Make Busy switch, how it's going to be configured, the pad server in the new environment, what are they to expect in this node host environment. And it's an action item that we were never able to close out. CenturyLink didn't get back to us on it, and so this was something that specifically CenturyLink was going to take offline and follow up with the PSAPs cutting in January to make sure that they had that information. So to Brett's point, this stuff we definitely don't want to be finding out at the time of the cut. So I don't know how we can predict all of them, but this one specifically was asked in mid December.
Okay. Is this all on the website? It's going to be my first question, so that I can make sure the loop has been closed on all of those open questions.
We've been tracking on this discussion items ESInet spreadsheet that Darrell's displaying right now. This is where the PSAPs authorities can get in and log questions for CenturyLink to review.
That's that. I will say, in general, there have been several concerns with just general communication and planning that have been brought forward. So I do have a document that I've been working with our team on that will go into more detail for the PSAP on what this project process looks like and what those major steps are. And I would essentially like to propose that I put this document together for every PSAP, regardless of where we are in their process and whether they've had a kickoff call or not, and re-level set that communication path. Provide that to everybody, as well as a summary snippet of their specific project plan and where we are with those milestone tasks, so that everyone has an understanding of where their project is, when they should expect, based on their targeted cut date, milestones like kickoff calls, circuit orders, PSAP surveys to occur, and when more regular project-specific communications or meetings should start to happen with their specific jurisdiction, and clear up some of that confusion and provide a more planned and expected communication path for everybody. I do have a draft document, I think, that I can send out to the group today that would show you what I'm proposing, essentially, as kind of a PSAP implementation guide overview document.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. I feel like that's something we've been asking for a while, but if we're going to get it now, I think that'd be great.
And
So on,
go ahead, Patty.
I just had one other thing on the Brett's side, if we're ready for that. So this is mostly for information. I was told it's not a major issue, but I'll find out tomorrow what it means. So apparently our calls are being double recorded, and I guess the way the span ports are configured on the Viper routing, the incoming calls are broadcast to both host points together or simultaneously, which means that if you have redundant recorders like we do, then your calls are going to be double recorded. Does that make sense?
And so you're not talking about recorded as the trunk or the ESInet session and then with the position as well, because that we do that currently. You're talking about you typically before you would only record your 911 calls on one of the two recorders. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So now it's both, and I've been told it's not an issue, but it was going to be explained at a meeting we're having tomorrow, or a standing meeting, so I just thought I'd bring that out. And the other thing is that we do have a checklist that we can send everybody for what we did for the cutover. It's being modified, otherwise I would have sent it out today, just to make sure we have everything on it.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be very helpful, Patty.
That was our test process after it went through to make sure everything was working.
Yeah, all the different steps that we did after the cutover.
And this is Athena, if you don't mind, can you all repeat what the transfer issue was that needed to be explained? I had a lot of background noise, so I didn't hear it, but I know you had to make a modification for that.
So that was just an issue where on Longmont they had some shortcut buttons pre-programmed for transfer in the CPE, and a handful of those buttons had legacy 2-digit codes that they were programmed to. Those 2-digit codes do not work in the new ESInet environment. They need to be updated to those. They had to be updated to the 3-digit star code transfers. The team was able to make those updates, but it's obviously, so we cut Longmont, made a number of test calls, tested the transfer case, it didn't work. We cut them back while we resolved that issue, and then move them back to the ESInet. We don't want to do that, so it's just an item to add to the checklist during pre-migration to make sure if you have any shortcuts programmed onto your computers that they've been updated to the new 3-digit star code transfers.
I guess I'm not familiar with the 2-digit codes.
So I can. This is Kevin.
Old. I think they're very old.
A long time ago, before we had SS7, before all the selective routers were tied together, there was a time period way back where we would program on your PSAP 2-digit star codes to transfer to other PSAPs. Now, we never deleted that. We came up with a new system. I'm thinking this is more like 15 years ago, maybe more. We did come up with when we tied all the selective routers together, and tied them together with SS7, we came up with a single star code plan. So any PSAP could transfer to any PSAP with a 3-digit star code. Some PSAPs didn't use that. They just stuck with their old 2-digit. And if they did that, the old legacy 2 digits aren't going to work on the new system. It's got to be the 3-digit star code. So
Kevin, if I can also jump in, this is Kimberly.
Yes.
There was also 2-digit star codes for speed dials for 10-digit numbers to reach different agencies. And so, for example, State Patrol had a 2-digit star code. I mean, there were just random ones throughout the state, and they are definitely legacy. And so all the PSAPs, everyone should go through your contacts and get them updated if you still have them. I think we went through that process in 2011 when we were doing some CPE configurations and found a handful of 2-digit star codes still in use.
So I'm confused, which probably isn't surprising, but Brett's replaced its CAD system and its telephone system in the period that we're talking about. Is that where the star codes are, or is it someplace not in those systems?
Yeah, it's going to be in your CPE and your Viper system, Joe. So what they probably did when they replaced it is they probably just copied over contact numbers, which, I mean, instead of starting from scratch and saying what's the number for all of these different agencies, in the Viper, they just probably copied them over, loaded them in, and that's how you guys got loaded with 2-digit star codes.
Well, maybe
and
what
we only
should
found
do.
them at Longmont. We did not find them at the other 3 sites, I think. I believe we only saw them at one time, and it was a mix. There was only a few.
Well, maybe what we should do is have whoever has those star codes just send them out to every PSAP so they can check and make sure they're up to date.
This is Jackie. A new star code list was circulated in 2016, I want to say. So yeah, if CenturyLink could definitely get that, and it's changed again since then because when they added Westco and then they moved Westco, so it'd behoove CenturyLink to put out the new star code list and make sure everything's updated on that list.
And that should also be on our checklist to make sure PSAPs are ready for the transfer. Now,
Right, and that's why I was bringing it up here, is it's something we'll want to make sure we validate prior to transfer that those have been updated and there's none hanging out there. I think I've got a list. It's all of the star codes in the state, so I don't know if everybody, I don't think you generally want to program all of those in, but you can find the ones most important to you.
Yeah, Cindy, if you can just email that over to me and Bruce, and then we'll get it in the folder for everyone.
Okay.
Thanks.
You know, one of the things I remember hearing about the 3-digit star code, at least for Bretza, was that it wasn't tested from a dispatch position during the pre-test.
We tested it from a dispatch position, but I think we tested it doing more of a flash transfer and not hitting the buttons, the short code buttons that were pre-programmed. So we weren't tying up the dispatcher with our testing, and we didn't, I don't think, actually catch how the dispatchers did the transfers. We didn't use the buttons. We were typing the star codes in directly. So that is a note to actually make sure if there's time available or dispatcher available to work with them during that testing to make sure there's not something in how they use the system that we're missing.
To be honest, I didn't. Well, I knew they were doing testing of the transfers, but I didn't pay attention to how they were testing them.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we were logged into a dispatch position that wasn't being used at that time, and we typed the star code that we wanted to transfer to in. We didn't use the shortcut button, and that's the difference. And when we did the migration testing and asked to be transferred to, I can't remember if it was Boulder County or Aurora, the dispatcher used the short code button, and that's where we found the issue.
Kimberly and Daryl, I just emailed the star code list to you guys. I got that from Wes Horn last month for another purpose, so I have that copy. It's labeled 2016 is what it's labeled, so I'm assuming there's been no changes since 2016. Even typically when there's a PSAP closure, that star code remains active and is just routed differently.
Would that be something useful to put in the resources folder?
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Do we have any more from CenturyLink on the review of the schedule, or are we ready to move on?
I think I have some questions on the review of the schedule, if we can. Thanks, Daryl, for putting that tab up. So not sure if we have dates yet for Douglas County, and wanted to capture those if you guys have those dates.
We do not, but we do have a meeting today with the stakeholders for Douglas County, so we should be able to start getting dates on the calendar. Circuits are installed, and we do have approval on the solution that was requested there. So I think we're ready to go ahead and schedule the equipment install and again put dates on the calendar. There's a meeting, I think there's 2 meetings on the calendar today, right, Nancy?
Correct.
This is Deanie from Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Could you send me the invites to those meetings? I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. Yeah, they came from Converged One. We can forward them to you.
And this is Jackie. I only have one of those 2 meetings.
And this is Shannon with Parker. I only have one of them as well.
So this is Daryl. This is one of the things that has really come out in the weekly meetings that we're having of upcoming PSAPs that are migrating, is that not everybody is necessarily being included in every call. And even if it's a topic that is only tangentially related to them, I think it's very important to include everybody on every call, because if you don't, you end up with this siloed information, and that's how mistakes get made. So I'm just going to really encourage everyone, and I know you said this came from Converge One, but even if it's coming from the CPE vendor, that doesn't mean that the party that is receiving it can't then reach out and make sure that everyone else was also invited. So I'd really encourage everyone to not have those one-off conversations.
Yes. And we have started creating distribution lists as well for each jurisdiction. As we get a specific list people want included, I'm creating distros so that we can make sure everyone's included.
Great, thank you.
And just to clarify, it's just one meeting today. It's the one that you have, Jackie, and I'm forwarding to Dina right now. The second meeting is with Denver.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
And to Shannon Brand as well, please.
Thanks, Daryl. I think I have that one at 11 o'clock.
Okay, good.
Okay, and this is Deanie. I'll reach out to Converge One to make sure that they remember to include me.
In the meantime, I've just forwarded it to you.
Thank you.
So I'm not showing any other cuts for February since Weld has been canceled at the end of the month. Do we have a date for Weld set yet?
No. Weld, we've got a CCS meeting with them on Friday, which will walk through some of the configurations that need to be made and potential changes on their system. And based on that, I'm going to work with them on training lead time they need and put some dates back on the calendar, but I'm going to go up and have a face-to-face meeting to walk through the project plan with them and then try to put some tentative dates back on the calendar. The next cuts I show now are Bloomfield and Westminster.
Okay, any other changes for March? Or do all those look correct?
Sorry, let me. Those look correct for now. I do hope that once we get confirmation on the AdCom circuits, which are another ongoing conversation, that we'll be able to get those rescheduled or potentially even Weld County. But those are the correct dates right now.
Okay, and AdCom, you had looked at either March 19th, April 2nd, or April 9th. You don't have a date yet locked in for them?
No, because we're still pending confirmation of that second circuit. And there's a few emails around that from last night and this morning. I need to follow up with Joel on.
Do you have anything further, Kimberly?
No, if CenturyLink doesn't have anything else on the schedule, I don't have any other questions. I'm good, thanks.
Okay, great. And I think is the next item on the agenda moving on to the discussion items, I believe.
Yes, and Daryl, if you want to go up to the filter, there's a filter underneath filter 2 called working filter. And then that should, that one should be working and help limit down. Okay, so for the discussion items, we have a handful here that have been added to the list. And so the first one has been pending since, actually a few of these since mid-December. And this one was a follow-up item for Nancy. She was going to review and follow up with wireless testing and then ask if the PSAPs can add steps and additional testing to the testing plan. Do we have a status of this one?
Yeah, we responded to that. We are unable to test the wireless in a pre-migration environment.
And to follow up on that, the wireless path really is not changing because of the way the migration happens. We are grabbing everything at the selective router level and repointing them to the new ESI network there. So the wireless calls still come into where they've always come into, using the path they've always taken into that legacy selective router. And we're changing that destination route once they've already been handed off to the selective router and repointing them at that point. So that's why there's no real way to test that in a pre-migration scenario because we can't really redirect a wireless call without potentially impacting production calls during that pre-production time.
Okay, the next item we've already talked about, which is the yes.
This is Jackie. I did make a test 911 call wireless into Aurora just to see after they went live what it looked like. And other than it not ringing at all on my end, it went well, and they think it very well.
So Jackie, you faded out a bit. You said it didn't ring in at Aurora. They didn't hear the audible ring.
On my telephone handset.
Okay.
It didn't ring. It just went straight to 911. They did answer. They did get a excellent phase 2 location, and I called from my basement.
Okay. Great.
And we are testing wireless as soon as we make the cutover. It is one of the test cases we're testing then. It's just pre-migration. We're not able to test it.
Okay, and then the next item we've already talked about, which is the pad device, the make busy switch, and how that's going to work for the remotes. And I have captured the action item for that one down below. So we'll close that one out. And then there was the next question about firewalls. How many do we need on our end to have optimal security? And so Daryl, you had an action item, and I think we're just going to keep kicking this can down the road for a later time to have that conversation with CI, AC, and I don't know if this is something we're going to do with the task force, perhaps.
I can, yeah, and I dropped the ball on this, and I take responsibility for that. I did not call Jerry. I will make a note to do that. I do see that under response, your man Ed said that you need to match what CTL is doing, but I'll get some confirmation from Jerry on that.
Okay, great. And then we had a question about using CPE techs, and I think this kind of goes to the question that even Weld is kind of faced with of managing the CPE techs in with the ESInet project, and so we'll close that out. That was just a point we wanted to bring forward to make sure there were enough resources that the team had allocated and that they weren't pulling from local resources to do that. This next item, we had a question about the implementation at Aurora. Looked like you put in EX1 devices instead of the proposed BV1s. We were curious on what the change was, why the change
So
was
I
made.
did see that one, and I had asked Kevin about that when I saw that question posted. And Kevin, feel free to jump in if you want, but essentially the DB1s are end of life, and EX1s are newer versions. So we went with the newer version, same functionality, rather than something that was end of life and was going to be in support soon. Kevin, is that?
That is a true statement.
This is Ed. So part 2 of that question was about whether they're the EX1Vs that actually do the kind of voice quality measurement. Do you have an answer to that part?
I don't remember that part of it. Is there? I'm looking at this. Let me see here. I have to magnify my screen. So
Are they an EX1 or an EX1V?
EX1.
I think they're, yeah.
Just from my rudimentary research on that, it looks like an EX1 doesn't do the voice quality measurement that the BV ones did, unless you add on that V option.
I going to say we do the voice quality on that to QoS. So I just order an EX1. I don't have a different part number, so we definitely do the voice quality on those.
Available on that for review?
What was that question? I didn't understand it.
Sheets available on that device that the person who asked the technical question would be able to review?
I don't know what review there. I know we're doing the testing, the QoS testing.
You're asking if there's a spec on the device that you can review?
Yeah, if there's a document, a spec sheet.
Cindy, why don't you put that as a note for us to follow up on? We can reach out to.
I'm already writing it down.
And we can get the spec sheets ourselves. I guess the big question is just, is it a base EX1 device or is it an EX1 with the V option?
And I'm writing that down to confirm with you guys.
And Ed, you had a question about the accepted risk having to do with EX1s. Do you want to expand that question?
Yeah, I can try. Unfortunately, that's all I know is there was a note after the first PSAP was migrated, and I don't remember which site it was, that there was an accepted risk regarding that monitoring device, and I wondered if CenturyLink could expand on what risk they're accepting and whether it's been mitigated at this point.
Was that something that was that was Aurora that cut, but was that something that was brought up by CenturyLink during the cut or brought up by that they wanted Aurora to accept? Do you remember, Ed?
I don't remember, and I'm trying to remember where I saw the note that there was an accepted risk. I don't know if it was a review of that first migration. It was on one of the documents on this site. Maybe post-cut lessons.
Yeah, if you find it in consent, because I'm not aware of any risk that was outlined.
Okay.
Hey, this is Rob Greer with the City of Aurora. There was no risk accepted for like voice quality or anything like that. The only thing we accepted was to be the, I guess, PSAP that would take any ESInet call that was not routable.
Right.
Ed, I recall something about an accepted risk, so I'll help you look and see if we can't find what was documented so we can just refresh ourselves and then re-ask the question.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. So this one will have an action item for CTL to follow up on exactly which device is being installed.
Yes.
Okay. And then the next action item is something that was already brought forward that Daryl had mentioned about communication and the lack of communication. Techs are arriving in the back room or wanting to get access to the back room, equipment arriving without notice. We also have had reports from folks about techs performing site surveys, and they need better direction about exactly what they're supposed to be doing when they arrive on site to do the site surveys. That it feels as if they're really unsure what their task is. So for the emails and communication, what we've put out to all of the PSAP's authorities is that you should be establishing a group, an email group that you want these 5 people to be communicated with, these 3 people, etc. And then our expectation, CenturyLink, is that you will communicate to that group and you'll be communicating all pieces of the project. And then in return, we need to be doing the same. We need to make sure that we have Cindy and Nancy, and I believe I put out Wes as well, the 3 of you in our communications. So we're communicating with your group in case somebody is off. That was the biggest concern about this, and that was the action item that we had discussed. So does anybody have any questions about that?
I think one of the things that I want to make sure is clear is if we provide you with a group, Cindy and Nancy, is that the group you're providing on the orders? Because we get I've seen some emails saying we'll be here by this date to install this circuit, and that was pre-group building. So if somebody submits a group to you, is that the email group that is being built into that order so everybody gets that automated message?
That automated message is generated by the site contact information, and Kevin, I don't think we want to list a whole group of people when we place an order, do we?
I don't know that we're able to.
Yeah, I think the system only allows a spot for one site contact person.
So that there lies a problem in that, as far as only one person getting notified. If that person's on sick leave or vacation or something, then the others that could possibly help aren't there.
Yeah, I'm not really paying attention to those automated emails. When I get the service order request, I'm reaching out to the PSAP immediately and letting them know that an order has been placed and what the due date is.
Okay.
And I think I've only gotten just a list for 3 jurisdictions right now, but I am building those out and then providing them to my team to make it easier, to make sure we don't miss anybody on those emails and to come to my inbox and check. So I have a distribution list for AdCom, Arapahoe County, and Douglas County. So I need to work with the other areas to make sure I have the correct list for who you want included in all project-related emails.
There was a question in the chat window. Where do they send the list to if they have a list?
Send it to me, Cindy Berry. Cindy.berry@CenturyLink.com. And I can type that in here.
Cindy, this is Deanie from Douglas, and I'm going to send you an updated list, and I appreciate your help.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is Kimberly. I need to go back up to the accepted risk on those devices. So we're looking at an email from Cindy on Monday, January 13th. And it says, team, we are go for the Aurora cut tomorrow at 5 a.m. with the accepted risk on the X1 probes. We will not move forward with any additional cuts until the X1 issue at Aurora can be resolved.
We had an issue getting those probes up and working in Aurora correctly. We had some not all of the messaging was coming through. So that has been resolved, and we've worked. I think the next day. I apologize for not pulling it up. We were able to resolve the firewall issues that was blocking some of the messaging from coming through correctly.
So what was happening, I can be specific on that, when we did our automated QoS testing, it wouldn't hang up. It wasn't seeing we weren't getting a buy message from the network. And I don't know which end wasn't getting it. I don't know if it was the CPE side, the EX1 side, or our route server side, but they would do the QoS testing and not hang up. And so there was timing, it was going through a timeout instead of a deliberate buy. So that was the specific test, and that has been resolved.
So the issue was more the performance of the unit, not the fact that they were accepting a risk with the unit.
Correct. And it would eventually time out, but that was something that was indicated. It wasn't catching that buy message, so they had the positive disconnect on the automated testing.
Okay. I appreciate additional information, and then I'll still keep this as an action item for you guys to take a look at the exact device you ordered, EX1s or EX1Bs.
Yes.
Okay. The next item we have is the item number 82, and this is a request from Westel PSAPs. They have a desire to test the CPE with the SIP network handoff. Their desire is to not do the PGM. They would like to do a direct SIP connection. So trying to work with Intrado, and really it should be working with CenturyLink to be able to test their CPE equipment and how it will behave, how their configurations, just to make sure they're good to go before they're cut. So we wanted to put that in front of the group for some discussion.
So I got looped into this morning. There's quite a bit of conversations going back and forth, and I'm working to set up a meeting with Intrado to walk through this specifically, hopefully later this week or early next week. I think there's a little bit of confusion on testing in production. We wouldn't generally allow testing in production, but there may be a window during that pre-production period where the network is up but we don't have live traffic on it that they might be able to test during.
So I know that you have some CPEs that are able to test in a lab environment. Is that only available for select CPE product offerings versus?
We did not test any CPE in our lab environment. We did not certify, I should say. We did test with some CPE, but we did not. It's not a certification of the CPE. It was a certification of the network itself. And whether it was, are they able to process calls? And they did all the different failover scenarios of the network itself. So we did not perform a validation of the actual CPE and make sure all the reports look good, voice recordings and stuff like that. It was just testing our network and our call delivery.
Okay, so that was done with a few CPEs. So is there an opportunity to do that with additional CPEs if the vendor is wanting to do that and the PSAP authorities would like that done?
We're not far enough in that conversation internally to be able to answer that right off.
Can you provide a list of the CPEs you tested?
I do have that. We did. I don't have the versions of them. We did test it with a Motorola Vesta system as an older version, not their current, and an older Viper system.
And I believe you also did it with CallWorks.
I was not aware of that.
We have not, but I know that CallWorks has been deployed in another state deployment with CenturyLink and the Intrado ESInet. But that, I think that test recently in the last week or two was actually completed.
Kimberly, didn't Westel indicate that they have also deployed with CenturyLink in another state? I'm trying to remember the emails.
No, I don't believe so.
Oh,
Not in states that are on an ESInet.
okay.
So states that, yeah, so not in this similar or like environment.
This is Dave from Clear Creek. We're one of the Westel agencies. They have worked with CenturyLink, but not to the RFAI specs in other states.
So Cindy, if you can just restate, you're going to be talking internally at CenturyLink and then talking internally with Intrado to discuss how testing can be accomplished prior to a cut. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, and what needs to be done, what we can do, and what information has been given to Westel. But I have been, like I said, I just got looped into this conversation this morning, but I'm working with Annette Roush and that team to get a deeper dive conversation set up in the next few days, specifically to talk through this issue.
Where there's been a deployment with a CPE in another state, can we find out what PSAP that was? So maybe we could contact them or find out if there were any wrinkles, what version and
Yeah, I think Joe, the issue specifically with this particular brand of CPE is there isn't a deployment in another state that is on a CenturyLink Intrado ESInet. So there's other deployments, but not in a like environment that we could say, okay, it's working here and lessons learned, etc.
But I thought there was one mention that was deployed in another state with an ESInet. Did I misunderstand?
That was a call work.
Yeah, that's not a Westel CPE. So Cindy, when do you think we'll be able to hear back from your conversations on how they're going, or for this group to be able to get an update on options? Do you think within a week or so?
Yeah, absolutely. I can at least give you an update of where we're at. I asked that the meeting be set for hopefully this week or early next week if this week wasn't possible. So I'll definitely get you an update.
Okay, I'm just going to have a follow-up request by 2/26. That is a full week. And then we'll hopefully hear back from you by then. Okay, anybody else have anything on that point that they want to ask about as it relates to testing? We have a handful of Westel PSAPs, so I think there's around 5 or 6 of them in Colorado. And I would say, Cindy, as you're having the conversation, maybe it's more not just Westel, it's PSAPs that you haven't previously tested. So we have a few other different CPE equipment in Colorado, and we would like to be able to find a path for them to all have that comfort in this project.
Yeah, it'd be great to find out how one would get on that list. This is Greg from Solicom.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this is not, I'm going to say CPEs outside of like a Viper or a Vesta. So okay. All right. Anything else on that item? Okay, great. Well, we look forward to hearing back within a week. The next item was specifically from Weld, but this has been something that, as Bruce brought up earlier, this group has been asking a lot about, which is a detailed project plan and really going through the items of the cut process and scope of the project. And so, Cindy, you indicated that you're working on a document that you can make it generic, but then customize it as for each PSAP as the cut gets closer. When are you going to be able to share that, the generic plan with this group so we can save it in the folder and review it?
I would say by Monday, Tuesday. I have the generic kind of implementation guide is about ready. I need to tweak the project plan a little bit based on some of the lessons out of Boulder and Aurora. But I can certainly share a generic copy of that. And I'm putting it into more of a master schedule so that each PSAP will have, or group of PSAPs will have their own kind of section that I'll be able to share with them that shows where we're at on their specific project.
Okay, great. So I'll just flag that by 2:25, so Tuesday.
Okay.
And then the next item, 84, which is we've already talked about, that was brought forward by Bretza, and that has to do with that pad device. And so Cindy, you also have an action item there. It's just following up with the engineer team and Intrado to determine if what we do with remote sites, if there's any other options with those abandonment module. So that's been moved down to item 84.
Yes.
Does anybody have any other items they want to track or document or bring forward for discussion before I wanted to show the post-cut lessons real quick as well? Okay, if you're trying to get off mute, then we'll just click over to the post-cut lesson. So as items are shared from the PSAPs, these aren't action items. These aren't items that are requiring a follow-up from CenturyLink. Those are tracked on the discussion items list. This post-cut lessons are items that we're sharing, that we're learning as Aurora cut, as Bretza now cut. So they're documented here. So at any time you have a lesson that you want to share or pass on, star codes, Viper loggers, things recording, all of that stuff, we're dropping them in this new spreadsheet that was created. So for those of you getting ready to cut, great idea to get in and take a look at this and just kind of look through it and go, yep, I covered that. Yep, we've talked about it. Yep, we understand that. If you have any questions about something that I logged here that doesn't make sense, I'm trying to capture the agency, and you can always email me or Bruce or Daryl, and if you want to talk specifically with that agency, we can put you in contact with like Patty for Bretza or Rob or Scott with Aurora, etc. So I just wanted to show that tab since it's relatively new that we created. Okay, Bruce, I think I went through both of those tabs for us.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Excuse me one sec. I'm going to have to remove my cougher if I don't get rid of this cough.
I know, it lingers forever.
Yeah, I've had it for 6 or 7 weeks now.
Yeah.
I think we are ready to move on to any open discussion. We have anything that we haven't already brought up in the other items? And then any public comment. Okay. I think we are at a point where we can cut this meeting a little bit short, and until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.